Okay, welcome again to the mySMARTLife webinar. Today, we will be talking about the urban transformation strategy, Smart All Around. My name is Gabi Kaiser. I work for Steinbeis Europa Center. Steinbeis is responsible for dissemination and communication, as well as exploitation for the EU-funded mySMARTLife project. We will have 6 presentations that you can see on your slide. We will start with an introduction of mySMARTLife and also of the urban transformation process by our 2 colleagues, Ruben and Eduardo. We will then move on to the topic Smart Change and Smart People, lessons from the acceptance journey by Victoria, also from Steinbeis Europa Center. We will focus some more on smart engaged people through a presentation by Elena, and then move on to Smart Economy, a presentation by Francesc, and then we will focus on the Smart Energy Planning through a presentation by Eneko. So if we start with the first one, the first presentation on the urban transformation strategy, as I said, we've got 2 presenters for you. One is Ruben, the other one is Eduardo. Let me quickly introduce these 2 presenters to you. Ruben works for Cartif and is the head of the smart city area of Cartif. He has worked for the last 17 years in the field of smart cities. He's also the project coordinator for mySMARTLife and is responsible for the overall delivery of this EU-funded project. Eduardo works for Tignalia and is project manager for the area of energy efficiency at Tignalia. Eduardo is also the work package leader for urban transformation strategy. It's basic for the work package in mySMARTLife. So I'll pass the floor to Ruben and Eduardo.
Thank you so much, Gabi and Anika, for your excellent organization of this webinar. Okay, as you have said, I'm going to start. I'm Ruben Garcia from Cartif, and I'm the project coordinator of mySMARTLife. And what I have in mind is just to give you a very short presentation of, in order to introduce you in which mySMARTLife consists. What are the foundations of the project and the framework of this project and where this project has been funded. So the first thing that I would like to tell you very briefly is in which framework this project is located. mySMARTLife is a lighthouse project funded by the European Commission. It started 3.5 years ago. We still have 1.5 years to finalize our project. And as I said before, this project is part of a large initiative, part of the Horizon 2020 program from the European Commission, that is the Lighthouse Projects program. This initiative is a 7-year series of topics in which projects have been funded during these 7 years. Now we are a family of 17 projects. There is still one call to be solved, and other 2-3 projects will join the family, and we are part of this initiative that was created in 2013. This framework was an initiative of the European Innovation Partnership on Smart Cities and Communities, together with the set plan and the European Commission, in which they decided that 50 European cities should act as front runners in energy transition in Europe. So they decided to create this series of topics during these years in order to fund large demonstration projects where energy, mobility, and ICTs were the focus areas of this type of projects. As I said before, these are large demonstrative projects, but not only demonstration, but also dealing with energy transition in European cities. So mySMARTLife is part of this family of projects. We are not alone. We have 6 cities in our project, and 3 of them are acting as lighthouse cities. They have to work in energy planning, but also they have to demonstrate a large set of smart actions, more than 150 in total in the 3 cities. And these cities are Nantes in France, Hamburg in Germany, and Helsinki in Finland. But we also have 3 cities as well that are acting as follower cities, as fellow cities, that are learning from the experiences of these lighthouse cities and that are working as well in energy planning. So these cities are Palencia in Spain, Rijeka in Croatia, and Bizgot in Poland. So we have 6 cities working together in energy planning, and 3 of them have the responsibility of implementing physical actions in the 3 cities. These are the lighthouse cities. But mySMARTLife is the joint result of 27 partners working together in this project. If we also include the linked third parties of these partners, we have more than 30 partners working together in this project, and we are cooperating to develop this very ambitious project. We have 6 partners working in the Nantes team, because we have local teams working in the 3 lighthouse cities together with the municipality. We have ENGIE, Novatec, Armins, Serema, and Eneris. In the case of Hamburg, we have 6 partners together with the municipality, 2 universities, Hafen City and the University of Applied Sciences, HAU. We also have Enercity, Telecom, Consult, and EnergyNet working with the municipality. In the case of Helsinki, we have 7 partners together with the municipality, Forum Virion, VTT, Helen, 2 SMEs, Voordeka and Saluspin, and the University of Applied Sciences, Metropolia. Our 3 fellow cities, Bizgot, Palencia, and Rijeka, as I said before, and we have also partners that are working as leading the cross-cutting activities of the project. In this case, Cardiff is the coordinator, but is also the leader of the evaluation framework and monitoring programs definition. Novatec is leading the replication activities of the project. VTT is leading the collaboration work package. Steinbase is leading the dissemination communication activities of the project. Tecnalia, as Gabi said, is leading work package 1, the definition of the innovative urban transformation strategy. And finally, ESADE, the business school, is leading the business models definition and business cases definition of all the activities related to the project. So as you can see, it's a large consortium for approximately 20 million project funded by the European Commission, and the investments triggered by the project are approximately 200 million euros. So it's a very ambitious project. I have tried to summarize here in this slide what is the concept of innovative urban transformation for the project. As you can see, we have placed the citizens in the middle of this innovative urban transformation that is an integrated process that is based on 2 main pillars. The first pillar is the smart citizen concept. We want to improve the citizens' life. We want to engage them in a very active and co-creative participation process in order to take better decisions and in order to enhance the knowledge that the city has of the problems of the citizens. So this is what we call the smart citizen pillar. There is a second pillar in this innovative urban transformation strategy that is the smart economy. What we want is that the city decides what are their main challenges together with the citizens, and in order to have a solid smart economy, what we propose is that the city creates and maintains an innovative ecosystem, local ecosystem, in order to promote employment, the delivery of innovative services, in order to keep these citizens live. And what we also propose is to develop a capacity building strategy in order to keep the knowledge that is acquired during the project in the local context, in the municipalities, and also in this local economy ecosystem that we propose. So all the processes of analyzing the demand, of the proposing solutions, of energy planning are kept also in the local context through this capacity building approach. If we split this process in time, in a time framework, what we propose first is to do a city audit. The first stage is a city audit, and here what we want is not to start from scratch. Of course, every city in Europe have their own planning strategies, and what we propose is to analyze them in detail in order to make a city audit and in order to know what is the starting point of the cities. And for that, we identify all the problems that are identified as city challenges. We propose that every solution that is implemented in mySMARTLife should answer to a specific city challenge. And for that, we want to count on with the active participation of citizens. This is what we call the city-led approach. The next stage is, of course, to propose solutions for these city challenges. And here we want to count again with the participation in the center of this participation with the citizens, of course, but together with key partners that propose technical solutions. And in that way, in this local innovation ecosystem is where the co-creation processes ensure the acceptance of the solutions by the citizens. The next stage is, of course, the demonstration. mySMARTLife is an innovation action, and we have to demonstrate and to pilot projects. Here we try to demonstrate not only the technology itself, the performance of the technology, but also we want to demonstrate that there is a feasible business model, a feasible business case behind that pilot, behind that solutions, so that we can ensure that this technology is feasible at a longer term. And for that, we create the last stage, that is the evaluation, the assessment process, in which we have proposed more than 200 indicators in order to evaluate the performance of the technologies, but not only from the energy point of view, but also from different perspectives, like the economical, the social, the environmental perspective. So this evaluation process includes many parts. And the final aim is, of course, to exploit the technologies in order to that the individual companies, especially the industry companies, can develop a massive rollout of the technology outside the project, of course. And also we want to ensure replication. This means that the technologies can be applied to different contexts, and that is where our follower cities are very important, because we are analyzing different economical, climate and environmental contexts in order to fine-tune the solutions that our industry providers are proposing to these different contexts. So this is more or less the general view of the project, but as I said before, mySMARTLife is also a demonstrative project, and we are demonstrating more than 150 actions in the cities of Nantes, Hamburg and Helsinki. This slide is summarizing what is the exact status at this moment of the implementation of these actions. Here I have summarized all the actions that are completed at this moment, and I'm not going to give you all the details. All the information is in our website, in our newsletters, but as you can see, we have a lot of actions finalized in the energy, mobility and ICTs pillars of the project, comprising retrofitting of buildings, new construction, working on the different grids, on the thermal grids, district heating grids, also on smart grids, electrical vehicles, charging stations, etc. So as you can see, many different actions are completed at this moment in the project. And this is all from my side. So thank you very much for your attendance to this webinar, and I hope that you can enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Hi, good morning to everybody. This is Eduardo Miera from Tecnalia. We are the lead partner for the development of this work package related to the innovative urban transformation strategy. As Ruben was explaining, it's based in different pillars, and we are summarizing them in these three main blocks. The one related to the technology solutions, the one related to a smart economy and smart people. Smart people because after all, services are provided to citizens. So cities must take into account and understand better what are the needs of citizens for providing and improve these services. Smart economy to understand how we can provide these services through real business models so that we can really make them happen, because otherwise without the business models probably we won't be able to keep them ongoing. And of course technology solutions, which are the ones that will provide within these business models the service to the people. Going much in deep in each of these three basic pillars, let me say that in the case of smart people, we have been considering mostly two main areas that you can see here. One is more related to the part of awareness and acceptance. So what we are trying is to increase the enthusiasm and support of the people towards this transformation process, because we do need to raise their awareness and acceptance for creating the positive image, and as long as we can change also behaviors. That will be very much of interest to support this transformation strategy. And on the other hand, we do have another specific focus, which is related to the engagement of these citizens. In fact, in some we do have specific interventions related to building retrofitting, for instance, where direct participation from the tenants or the owners is required. So there must be a direct engagement in these processes. But at the same time, we are also looking at how we are engaging stakeholders and citizens throughout the whole planning process of this transformation strategy. They must be part of the whole planning process. So we will see in the two aspects related to the social awareness and acceptance and engagement processes, specific presentations later on. Related to a smart economy, we have also been trying to framework which are the main aspects that must be considered. First one related to the city business model itself. we do understand that the cities do have their own business model. They do have their own framework and requirements, and we do need to take that into account to understand how they work and what are the needs of the cities. So we have developed two specific tools. One is the city business model canvas, and the other one is the value creation ecosystems that provide and help cities to define their own city business models. On the other hand, we are also working on how to frame this ecosystem that is needed for this business development. And this ecosystem has been studied and analyzed both for big companies and on the other hand for small and medium-sized companies and startups. And at the same time, we were also analyzing what are the innovative business models that can be applied for the development of these solutions. This is also something that we will be seeing later in a specific presentation. Related to the technology, of course, we do have, we do know that there are many technologies that can be applied as solutions for the cities. What is perhaps more difficult is to know which one is best, how we can prioritize them, whether to choose between a biomass or a heat pump in a specific solution. That's sometimes something more difficult for cities. So what we have developed in this work package is a prioritization strategy and tools that can help cities to find a way in an objective way to prioritize these technologies. Why? Because we understand that, of course, there are some direct impacts related to what we are choosing, but at the same time, there are indirect and induced effects related to these investments that must also be taken into account. This is like this iceberg that we are seeing here. The direct impact could be what we see on the surface, but the indirect and induced effects, what is under the water, can be as big as the direct impact, or much bigger sometimes. If we don't consider the whole picture, we might be making a mistake, or perhaps not making or taking the right choice. When considering this, the direct, indirect, and induced effects, we try to focus on the environmental, economic, and social aspects, so that we can evaluate specific areas in these three fields that can lead us to prepare through specific tools this prioritization strategy for the cities. We will also see examples of this later with a specific presentation. Then finally, as Ruben was saying, this is we are really in a time for change. We are in a transition process for all the cities. Cities do need to take actions, and this change probably will come not only from the specific solutions, but also from understanding better what other cities are also doing, and being able to learn a little bit of other projects, interventions, and trying to apply them to our own environments. So we are also we have developed a specific activity related to an innovative urban coaching and mentoring that provided exchange and capacity building for replication for the cities involved in the project. It's been very interesting. So far, we have analyzed over 30 different projects that have been studied, analyzed, and selected by the different cities. And hopefully we have been able to improve solutions and offer different type of solutions to the cities participating. That's all from my side. So, Gabi?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much, Eduardo. I'd like to thank both of you, Ruben and Eduardo, for your thoughtful and comprehensive introduction to A, the project, and B, the urban transformation process and what we're trying to achieve. We would like to move on to our colleague, Victoria. Firstly, let me introduce Victoria to you. Victoria is project manager at Steinbau's Europa Center. She has a PhD from the University of Sussex, and in her work, she's focusing on social innovation. So the aim of Victoria's presentation is to provide an overview of the lessons learned from the acceptance journey dealing with the interventions in mySMARTLife. So that is mainly focused on basically what was happening in the lighthouse cities that Ruben has previously mentioned. So I'm passing on to Victoria.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for attending this webinar. Thank you to Gabi for the introduction. When we considered what to do with this deliverable, one of our aims was really to present the experiences that we've made in the project in a way that it would be helpful for others who would set up interventions themselves. So the question was, how can we share these experiences in a way that you can all profit from it? And especially the experiences regarding citizen feedback and the options you have in shaping the intervention according to that feedback. Our approach was we had 9 case studies from the 3 cities in the mySMARTLife project, and we did a multi-case analysis based on that. And when we looked at all of these case studies, we considered 2 criteria that could be used for analyzing these. First of all, the interventions all have a journey over time, and we decided to describe that journey with the 3 different phases: design, delivery, and use. And the second criteria was the different levels of actors who influence the interventions in these phases. So that basically means who decides whether an intervention continues and in what form it continues. And we have the 3 levels: micro, which is individuals and households; meso, the local community in town; and macro, the regional and national stakeholders and policies. And these acceptance journeys are then, if you put those 2 criteria over each other and then look at the different intervention of how that plays out. And on the next slide, I'll show you an overview first, so you can see what that looks like. And then in the following slides, I'll go into detail for each of those acceptance journeys, how the journey itself looks, and then present an example so you can hopefully understand better what we're talking about. So in this overview, what you can see graphically very well is that the time at which the micro level, so basically the users and citizens, get on board or influence the intervention, can be quite different. So either it can be relatively late in an intervention's life or relatively early. And the earlier it is, the more flexible your journey is. That means the more options you have to change the intervention, and therefore that can really be beneficial for the social acceptance through an intervention's lifetime. I'll first start with a binary acceptance journey. So those are interventions where you have to actually deliver the intervention without any influence of the micro levels. So the macro and meso levels influence both the design and the delivery, and the user basically only decides whether to use the intervention or not. The reason we call this the binary acceptance journey is because basically in that kind of intervention, you have to make infrastructural decisions that cannot be reversed. So you cannot later, if you have a feedback from the citizens that they would like something changed, it's just not possible anymore due to the nature of the intervention. And therefore, it's really crucial that you try to include points for user acceptance into these infrastructural decisions beforehand, before the delivery is actually done. That's then really beneficial for the social acceptance. And one example from the mySMARTLife project for this kind of acceptance journey is the robot bus in the Lighthouse City of Helsinki. This was a pilot to address the last mile mobility and also to really try out such an automatic electric vehicle in real life. They had 2 test periods of about 6 months. And what was really striking there, that because the technical limitations were so high, that even though they tried to get input from users and also from the transport authority, which are experts in how the cities run, what kind of transport options you have and where it might be best, it just wasn't possible. And the reason for that was, well, you had to first purchase the vehicle, but actually also the route had to be prepared really well. You need to put stops in, you need to look at tree trimming, that the bus doesn't stop because a tree branch is hanging in its way and things like that. So that's really a lot that you need to decide on, and then that decision is final. What Helsinki then did is, after the robot bus was put in place, was delivered, then it was used, and those users were asked to fill out a survey to see how they were accepting this intervention. And they did state that in general they felt safe when using the robobus. So the problems were more with other road users, actually, because of the nature of the technical nature of the intervention, I should say. The bus was driving relatively slowly, and some of the other road users then overtook, sometimes quite recklessly. So the engagement process should actually include users of the robot bus and also other traffic participants. And also going back to this binary acceptance journey, so basically the city had to make this decision of what vehicle to purchase, where to put the route, to prepare the route, and then after that they could make no changes anymore due to the citizens' feedback. So they had to be really careful in how they made those decisions. Moving on to the next type of acceptance journey, which is the semi-flexible acceptance journey. So again, you have the macro and meso levels, which cover the design of the intervention. And the micro level in this case is covering more of the intervention's lifespan, because it's covering the delivery and the user phase. So because of that, you can actually make changes to the delivery due to the user's feedback, which again helps to increase the intervention's acceptance. Typically, these are, for example, interventions in smart cities where you have something in a household that the user has to decide to install in a household. So the delivery is actually on the user's side. And one example from the mySMARTLife project is the smart heating control, also in Helsinki. So the larger context for that was the Helsinki carbon reduction targets on a national as well as a regional and local level, and part of that was retrofitting homes. And in spring 2017, the housing association and the part of Helsinki called Mariaka decided to install smart thermostats. And what they did here, which is really interesting, is they targeted basically 2 groups. So first of all, with the information, I should say. So first of all, they organized a meeting for the housing associations and the professional services that were all involved in delivering these smart thermostats to the users. But they also put a big emphasis on informing residents. And they did leaflets, internet pages, messaging boards, but also really interactive workshops. And again, being very strategic and choosing board members of the housing association, which were part of those workshops, who could then, of course, pass on the information to other residents. And one smart decision they also made is to deliver the intervention in 2 phases. So basically, because the second phase was delivered a year later, it did allow them for feedback on how the installations were done, how they look like, to take user experience and user feedback into account. And one important aspect we should also mention is that you need resources for that. You need to allocate resources for the support provided. So again, while the design of the intervention itself, the users had no say in it, for the delivery, and especially for the second phase, they actually had quite an impact, which again is helpful for the social acceptance. Moving on to the third kind of an acceptance journey, which is the flexible acceptance journey. This is, as the name says, the most flexible of the journeys. So that's the kind of interventions where you have the most opportunity to act on users' feedback. So the macro and meso levels cover part of the design phase, but then you already have an influence of the micro level, the users already on the design phase, and of course also the delivery and the use. And that means users can actually influence the design, so really early in an interventions journey, and you can have feedback loops that you can implement with users, and again, to use that important opportunity to create acceptance. And in the mySMARTLife project, one example for that is the Projet Renov in the Lighthouse City of Nantes. This is a digital platform for retrofitting advice and actions. And the larger context here is again the Nantes Carbon Action Plan and the energy transition. And this platform for retrofitting advice and actions, users were informed about it through information and advertising campaigns. And actually, there were two versions of the platform developed. So the users tested the platform, and then some of their recommendations were added to the second version. So they actually had an influence even in the design phase and as well as in the delivery phase. So coming back to what I started with, us trying to write this, or us trying to portray the experiences in a way that it will be helpful for you, what would be some of the recommendations that you can take on board if you find this concept interesting and helpful? So first of all, you can look at your intervention and consider what type of journey it represents. And if you have a binary or semi-flexible, you know, some interventions are just that way, and there's technical reasons for it. There's nothing you can change. But if there's any way you can create opportunities to change the intervention, even after the design and delivery phase, for example, like the housing association Mariaka did in having a second phase put in, this is really helpful for social acceptance. And if that's just not possible, as I said, sometimes the technicalities or technologies are just contrary to that, then ensure that you take the citizens' needs into account, ensure that you have their extensive feedback so you can put it into and use it to design and deliver an intervention. And if you have an intervention that represents a flexible acceptance journey, this is great. So that means you have lots of options, but it also means you have to make sure that you have a budget. So don't have your budget only for the first phase, but also make sure you keep some budget to create changes after the initial launch. That's all from my side. If you're interested in the deliverable itself, it is available on the mySMARTLife website, where we describe the acceptance journeys in much more detail. You can also read up on all the case studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, very, very interesting and insightful presentation on the acceptance journey. What I wanted to add is any discussions or questions, we can have a comprehensive discussion at the end, and Victoria is also available to answer some questions. So moving on, we're sticking with the topic of smart people. Our next presenter is Elena. Elena is also working at Tegnalia, so she's a colleague of Eduardo. Elena has a PhD in sociology and is a researcher at Tegnalia. She has worked and is working in the thematic field of smart people, citizens engagement. And Annika will introduce to you the tools that were used in mySMARTLife. So I'm passing the floor on to Elena.
Thank you, Gabby, for your nice presentation, and thank you everybody for attending this webinar. I'm going to start presenting the methodology that we designed inside the project. It's a methodology to support the citizen engagement in the transition of a city into a smart energy city. This methodology has the goal to incorporate citizens and professionals in the definition of the city vision and in the actions needed for the transformation. The methodology we designed is flexible to be adapted also for a city that's starting from scratch or to a city that has an advanced strategy or a transformation process already begin. It's a cascade methodology of 3 workshops. In the first one, you identify the main objectives to be achieved with strategy. In the second one, to detect the barriers or bottlenecks to achieve the objectives identified. And in the third one, you define the solutions to overcome the identified barriers or bottlenecks. The process serves to manage the interests and expectations from local stakeholders and citizens and to empower them in taking part of the strategy implementation actions. This will make it easier to obtain citizen support and acceptance when implementing the strategy. This methodology was implemented in the 3 lighthouse cities of the project, and the main conclusions are that any methodology for citizen engagement must be carefully selected and have to be as flexible as possible to be included as part of existing processes or strategies in the city. Also, for the implementation and design of the workshops, it's very important to include several departments of the city on topics related to the energy transition or its transversal aspects, and also contractors and long-term partners such as energy experts. It is also important to give enough time to allow participants understand the concepts of energy transition in these workshops or applying this methodology. This methodology is a good example of knowledge co-creative process in which local knowledge on the area and technical knowledge on energy and building technology were combined. And also it's an opportunity for participating stakeholders to get together about the topic of smart city. Could be a good starting point for community building. In order to support the involvement of citizens in the transformation strategies of the cities, we also dip in possible ICT tools that can be used inside these methodologies and inside these transformation strategies. A total of 95 ICT tools for citizen engagement were analyzed according to different criteria. Levels of engagement in e-participation, because there are many tools, many participative tools, but are they really involving the citizens? In which steps of the decision-making process? Also, another criteria were the technological requirements to analyze the trends of technological trends of this kind of tools. We also include the possibilities of replication in different socioeconomic contexts, looking about the availability of the tools, the cost, the usability, and finally the level of inclusiveness, who was attending to see if the tools addressed to a specific group or left out a specific group. These criteria have been transformed into indicators and indexes, and the results obtained for the 95 tools have been represented in a dynamic dashboard to facilitate its comparison. If you are interested to have more information, you can go to the deliverable 1.5 in mySMARTLife website. Okay. ICT tools themselves could be a precious instrument for an inclusive participation process, but just if they accomplish the following conditions. In order to motivate participants and citizens, should be simple, easy to use, technically well-functioning, with visually appealing designs, and need to be flexible to include new topics or functionalities that were not initially foreseen. Also, they be made known through active and extensive marketing campaigns to engage citizens, because if the tools are not known by the population, they are not going to use it. Administrator must make active use to fulfill their function and to maintain the motivation of citizens. People with a lack of technical prerequisites should not, in principle, be excluded. Different ways of including them should be studied. For example, combining non-digital processes or on-site devices with human guidance or support. And must be technically up to date to be able to be used with different mobile phones, with new updates in phones, etc. And how this kind of tool should be managed from public administration? Well, the first, a public administration needs to select the tools that fit best with the needs of its participation strategy, and then centralize them in a unique web or portal. It's not recommended the dispersion of the tools because it makes more difficult the participation. Also, these tools need to be articulated in the citizen engagement strategy with the necessary political commitment, with clear expectations with regard to the results of participation and treatment, and with the necessary allocation of resources for technical and administrator updating. In that sense, the list of tools that can be used is extensive. There are tools specifically designed for certain topics or domains, others that are more general, and others which integrate several tools in a unique platform. The important aspect is to select those that fit best with your strategy and use them rationally. Here are 3 examples of these 3 categories of tools, represented by the 3 best ranked tools from our analysis. First one, Decidim, is a digital platform for citizen participation for whole process of citizen participation that integrates different tools. Climate Street is a tool more focused in a specific domain, in this case, energy transition. And the third one, MapTuner, is a tool not connected to a specific sector or topic. It's a surveying tool that can be used in several topics and several processes and can be integrated. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. Very interesting, especially I think the focus on, if you look at the 2 areas, the acceptance journey that Victoria presented, and now also the ICT tools that are being used for citizens engagement. So it's like the 2 make a pretty complete picture of citizens engagement and the focus of on smart people in mySMARTLife. Now, the next presentation is from Francesc, and we have actually heard from Francesc this morning that he might have problems joining us. So I need to check, is Francesc, are you actually in the call? If you are, this is your moment to speak up. Because if he's not, we're lucky. Francesc.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thank you. I'm just quickly wanting to introduce you to all our listeners. Francesc is the EU Project Coordinator and Senior Research Development Manager at ESADE. ESADE is a business school in Barcelona. He has a PhD from the University of Politècnica de Catalunya, and in the framework of mySMARTLife, Francesc has done a lot of work on business models. So Francesc, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I cannot pass the slides. Okay, now, sorry. So first of all, I want to introduce a little bit the idea of business models, because during the last 20 years, this idea has been understood as essential element in the development of a product or a service by a private company. And in fact, we can understand business model as a way to explain what the company does and how these companies make money doing that. In other words, and according to Otto Walder, it is a rationality that explains how a company creates, deliver, and capture value. But focusing our attention on innovation, which is the main focus of this webinar, let me say that there is a broad consensus about the fact that innovation is central for business success, and it is key to create a competitive advantage at the firm's level, as well as a driver of economic and social progress on a national level, as it increases productivity or efficiency in many different times. We are in front of an innovation when we introduce creative ideas or new technologies in products or services that are accepted by markets and society. And I want to highlight this idea. We are in front of an innovation when the new ideas are accepted by the markets and society. And in that sense, novelties have to be, first of all, desirable, feasible, and of course, viable from an economic point of view. According to Chesbrough, while many companies pay a lot of attention, dedicating important resources and assets to explore new ideas and technologies, they often miss the opportunity to change or to modify or even to improve their business models. And nowadays it seems clear, and maybe more than ever, that innovation must include, for sure, business models. And in this framework, in mySMARTLife project, we decided to study different types of business models innovation that the project is implementing or was implementing. And in order to ensure the coherency in the analysis, we decided to study our interventions in two main sections. First of all, we analyzed what kind of business innovation the companies are implementing, and then we analyzed the degree or the intensity of that innovation. In order to develop the first part of the analysis, we used a very well-known tool which was presented in a book called 10 Types of Innovation, and this book was developed by Killey and et al. So with other authors, and the authors established and defined the following 3 categories of innovation: configuration, which is focused on the innermost working of a company, and it comprises 4 types of innovation: offering, and experience. So as I said, configuration comprises these 4 main types. We can improve the profit model, our network, the structure, and the process. In terms of the offering is focused on core products or services and comprises 2 main types of innovation: the product performance and the product system. And finally, we have also the business model innovation related to the experience. And the experience is focused on how to improve the user's experience and how to create a great customer product interaction. And in that sense, we have 4 main types of business model innovation in terms of experience. We have service, we can improve the channel, the brand, or also the customer engagement. Obviously, any business model innovation could combine as many types of novelties as a company wants. In terms of degree, we usually associate innovation with disruptive ideas or radical transformations. But innovation is built from small steps to breakthroughs. So in order to take into account this very long range of innovations, we have defined 3 main degrees of innovation: the incremental innovation, lateral innovation, and finally the disruptive innovation. Here you have the different definitions of them. So in order to study the different innovations implemented in our project, we selected according to our Lighthouse cities, 3 interventions for the city of Hamburg, 3 interventions for the city of Helsinki, and 4 interventions for Nantes. Starting for the 4th intervention of Nantes, we decided to study the retrofitting in individual houses, which is in general terms try to increase the comfort and to decrease the energy consumption of houses. The 2nd intervention that we studied was the digital boilers, which promoting the renewables integration and energy efficiency. The 3rd one was the lighting optimization system, which offers the right light in the right place at the right moment. And finally, the citizen solar project, which involved citizens to develop green energy through PV panels. In Hamburg, the 1st intervention that we studied was the smart homes assistant, which increased elderly people's security and better overview of their energy consumption. The second one was the PV on roof and home battery storage, which offers the possibility to get real green electricity from roofs. And the last one was the community car sharing, which offers the possibility, as you can imagine, of moving without having an own car and promoting public transport. And finally, in terms of Helsinki, we studied the HTM control concept, which increased comfort at home, and it also allows to control indoor temperatures. The second one was the demand management, which is introducing the idea of batteries as a service. And finally, RES as a service, which offers the possibility to participate in a solar energy production to those people that cannot afford a power plant for themselves, which is also a very interesting idea. Here, we have a table with the different types of business model innovation and the different types of degrees. And on the left side of the slide, you can also see a table where each intervention presented in the previous slide has a number. And here, right now, you can see how our interventions are distributed in this table. You can see that most of our interventions are incremental in terms of degree, and it clears, from my point of view, it clearly means that they are the result of a long innovation process developed by our companies, developed also by our lighthouse cities, and it also means that they have been engaged in this issue of business model innovation for a while. But we can also see that in terms of the type of innovation, some of our interventions are trying to improve their offer and the experience of the customers. And particularly, if we talk about experience, we can see that our companies, our cities are focusing on improving the service. And in that sense, it is very interesting to highlight that our companies are trying to improve the utility and the performance of the offering, increasing the value of their products and services. And for doing it, they are also using lateral and disruptive innovation. So overall, we have a very different type of innovations, and in general terms, the results of the project in that sense are very, very good. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much, and it would be a pleasure if you have any question at the end of the webinar.
Thank you, Francesc, and thanks for being able to make it to join us. We're moving on to our last presentation for today, and I have this pleasure to announce Eneko. Eneko is also working for Tegnalia. He is a researcher at Tegnalia, and he's specialized in sustainable energy planning. So we're moving from smart people to business world, smart economy, now to energy planning. Eneko, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Gabi, for the presentation, and thank you all for attending the webinar. Well, in this session, I will introduce the main conclusions of some of the activities that were carried out in the framework of Work Package 1, more precisely in some activities related to subtask 144, which its aim is the prioritization of interventions based on multiple criteria. That in this case, they are mainly the socioeconomic impacts and also the replication potential of those interventions in different areas of the city. Well, this presentation will be divided in two main parts, and the first part is more related to the specific methodology which has been developed for the evaluation and the comparison of different interventions based on those direct, indirect, and induced impacts. And the second part of the presentation will be focused on the matrix of interventions, or what we call the compact prioritization tool that has been developed for it's Lighthouse Cities, which aims to provide several criteria for prioritization in an objective way of different interventions. And all this information can be consulted more in detail in the two deliverables that you can see in the screen. Well, in the first part, related to the socioeconomic impact assessment of those interventions that have been implemented in Lighthouse Cities, a methodology has been developed in the project for this socioeconomic impact assessment. This methodology can be divided for this presentation in two main steps. The first step uses the supply chain analysis of those interventions, the economic characterization of those interventions in order to generate what we call the SOCs, which are the economic representation of those interventions so that they can serve as main input for the following step of the socioeconomic impact assessment itself. And this first step of the methodology can be an overview you can see in the screen in this figure, and maybe the most interesting part could be the how to do this supply chain characterization, which proposes several steps. The first step would be the disaggregation of the cost of the interventions by the main commodities or the main components that participate in each of the interventions. The second step would be the assignment of those costs with the corresponding commodity according to the commodity classification that is used in the following step in the socioeconomic impact assessment. And the final two steps are more focused on evaluating the capabilities of each of the city for the manufacturing and distribution of the components that are needed in the interventions that are implemented in the cities, and also on evaluating the origin of the costs and evaluating the different stakeholders who are involved in those costs. Well, this is an example of the supply chain characterization of the interventions that are implemented in the city of Nantes. And here you can see a comparison between the interventions selected, which are the digital boiler, the solar plant, the smart lighting, the retrofitting of buildings, and the electric buses. And in different colors, you can see the proportion of the cost, which are divided in different commodities according to this classification, the CPA classification mentioned before. And you can see how each intervention has different proportion of those costs, and this is precisely what they make different as the input for the following step of the socioeconomic impact assessment, which I will introduce now. In this second step of the methodology, the socioeconomic impact model itself is developed based on the input-output approach. This input-output approach shows all the interactions between sectors and in a national economy, and it explicitly reveals supply chain relationships between different sectors. But as I said, this is usually used at national level, and here for the project, trying to adapt it as much as possible to the city level, the NeoTheme model developed by Cratena has been used as the main basis for the modeling, and this has been adapted to the regional scale following the charm methods. And this regional scale for each of the cities is the following: is Pays de la Loire for the city of Nantes, Hamburg for the city of Hamburg, and Helsinki-Uusimaa region for the city of Helsinki. So all these national accounts have been adapted to this new scale so that we can particularize a little bit more the results of the analysis. Well, and in the following slices, you can see the type of results that can be obtained with following this methodology. And the results are represented here as impact indicators that in this case are represented as multipliers, which aim to provide a better understanding of the relation between the investment made in each of the interventions and the type of effects, in this case, those direct, indirect, and induced effects that are originated at that regional scale. In this case, the indicators or multipliers selected for the analysis are the household disposable income, the increase of the value added per sector, the increase of the production, and the generation of local employment. And here you can see, in the case of Helsinki, for example, how the smart lighting control gets great performance in terms of increasing the domestic production. But we can see also that if we evaluate the creation of employment, other interventions such as the solar power plant or the smart lighting also get a good performance. So this provides or allows this type of comparisons with this multi-criteria perspective. Something similar happens in the city of Nantes, where we can see that the digital boiler shows a great performance. And also in the city of Hamburg. Here I want to focus attention on the type of level of detail that can be obtained from the analysis. Each of those results or multipliers can be evaluated more in depth. And in the example of smart street lighting, you can see how these effects are distributed in the different sectors of the economic activity of the region. So here you can see that, for example, the manufacturing of fabricated metal equipment, manufacture of electrical equipment, and this type of sectors are the sectors that are more directly affected for this type of interventions in this case. But you can see also that due to the indirect or the induced effects, other sectors of the local economy are also affected, although in a bit lower level. Well, and now I want to move to the second part of the presentation, which is focused in the generation of this matrix of intervention based on impacts, or this compact prioritization tool that has been developed for each of the lighthouse cities in order to provide them a tool for helping in this decision making on how to prioritize different interventions that can be deployed in the city, thinking also in the replication potential of some of the interventions in each of the cities. This prioritization is based on the multi-criteria decision making, and more precisely in the analytical hierarchy process methodology. And the prioritization is based on two main aspects. First, the weight or the importance which each city gives to each of the indicators that has been selected for this prioritization. And the second, the performance itself of those interventions for each of the indicators that have been selected. And in this case, you can see how we consider the replicability and scale-up indicator, but also the socioeconomic impact indicators that I have explained before. And here you can see how all those indicators have been grouped in four main dimensions: the economic business dimension, the environmental dimension, the technology dimension, and the regional socioeconomic impact dimension. And you can see how, based on the criteria of each of the municipalities and of the cities involved, those dimensions, but also the indicators themselves, are provided with weight or relevance that, according to this AHP method, is provided a final weight, so that different interventions can be compared. So here, before showing some examples of the type of results that provides this tool, I want to make some appreciations related to the interpretation of those results. The first one is that this prioritization is dynamic in the compact tool. So it will change depending on the inputs that the cities give to the tool. And these variations will depend on the following aspects. First, the performance of the intervention for each of the indicators, and second, the weight that the city gives to each indicator. So if any of those aspects vary, the order of the prioritization of the interventions will also vary in the tool. And to finish, I want to show you an example of the prioritization in at least a first interaction of the analysis. And here you can see in the example of Helsinki how the city gives great relevance to the potential for CO2 emission reduction, but also to the rest of intervention of indicators such as the increase in energy efficiency and others. And according to the performance of those interventions for each indicator and the relevance of that, which is shown of this waste, we can see how the charging points and the electric vehicle obtain a great punctuation or a great performance, followed by the smart public lighting, the solar power plant, the smart demand response, and the retrofitting intervention. And something similar happens in the case of Nantes, where you can see that the relevance of each indicator varies depending on the criteria of the municipality of Nantes. And you can see how the increase in energy efficiency, but also the regulatory replacements get more relevance. And according to that, the electric bus intervention would be in the first position, followed by the digital boiler, the smart lighting, and the solar power plant. And to finish the presentation, the results of Hamburg, you can see how the socioeconomic impact indicators get a great relevance here. And according to that and the relevance of the CO2 emission potential reduction, the large wind turbines appear as a good option, followed by the charging infrastructure, the retrofitting, the electrical vehicles, and the smart lighting interventions. Well, that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Enrico. We would now like to open the floor for questions. So there are basically two options. You either unmute yourself and just speak up, or the other option is you can add your question into the chat box and then send it to me, Gabi Kaiser. There's a little field that opens up that says send to, and then just find my name, and then I will read them out and we can have a discussion. It's a great opportunity to have to talk to some of the urban transformation specialists that we have with us today. So any questions, please? Anybody who wants to put something, has a question that needs to go in the chat box or that they would like to type into the chat box.
Hi, Gabi. Here's Maria from Helsinki.
Hello, Maria. Have you got a question?
Yes, I can open the discussion if there's no one else to do that right
Please.
now. So, yeah, thank you for the very interesting presentations. I think they were all very interesting. I have a question for Elena, actually. And first of all, I want to thank you for the practical recommendations for the ICT engagement tools. And I think you put well that there needs to be political commitment to apply the knowledge gathered and clear expectations, how that will be done, and some resource reserved to do that. I was wondering that in this process of studying these tools, could you also form an understanding how widely these tools are used in these smart city planning cases in the European cities, or was that in the scope of this study? could you form an understanding of this, how widely these are being used right now?
Sorry, I think I don't understand the question. Could you repeat?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you made a study of the, was it 96 ICT engagement tools that could be used by the cities in the smart city development, or maybe in more traditional city development as well. And I was wondering that were you studying how widely these tools, each of them are, or them as a group, are currently used in European cities in this field?
Well, many of the examples, almost everyone, comes from experience of European cities or for different cities use. When we search, well, we start the analysis with the Lighthouse Cities, as you probably remember, asking for the tools each of the lighthouse working the project are using in this sense, also with the followers. And then we try to gather other examples of tools used that we know about from other smart cities projects, or tools that we have searched from another sources. But in many times, or most times, all of them are used from a city. We don't compare exactly if the cities using it are smart city, are considered part of a smart cities network, or you understand me?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, thanks for the answer. Yeah, I get the context now of the study. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Elena, for your answer, and Maria for your question. Do we have any more questions out there? Well, then I would like to thank Ruben, Eduardo, Victoria, Elena, Francesc, and Eneko for their interesting and very good and excellent presentations. Thank you all for taking part in our webinar today. If you're interested and want to find out more about mySMARTLife, please do go onto the website. You'll find our deliverables, reports we've written. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And the other option is that we will be doing another webinar on urban retrofit on the 10th of March. So join us. You can actually, if you stay in touch with us via Twitter, you will see all the promotion that we will tweet out with regard to the webinar, our next webinar, and then you can join us again. So thank you very much for being part of this. We're saying goodbye.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Anika. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye to everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.